you know it's recruitment season for housing officers. It is a fast-paced process which can be challenging at times because it is easy to get distracted by the recruitment process while all of us work hard at meeting the needs of our residents. I have always made it a point with our staff in January training to stay focused on the reason why we are here so that none of us get caught up in the recruitment season in a way that current residents and staff perceive us to place more value in our future staff than the one we currently have. Maintaining this balance is critical. However, we would be kidding ourselves if we did not think that recruitment and retention are vital to the future success of our residential life programs. In particular, hiring a visually diverse staff that helps us meet the needs of all of our residents is crucial, which brings us to today's topic, recruiting and retaining staff of color. So, Quiana, what is our learning objective for today's webinar?
Our learning objective is to learn strategies to create a more diverse candidate pool, and as a result, recruit and retaining as a more visually diverse residential life staff that can better meet the needs of our students. The benefits of having a visually diverse staff is important in supporting the diverse student needs and promote social justice and cultural understanding within our society, because we're trying to make global citizens. Understanding is the first goal to establishing those diverse candidate pools, and we will get back to this topic in a second.
We cannot promise that there's a magic bullet for this, but for us at Eastern Illinois University, implementing what we are about to recommend has helped us, and we hope it will help you. Hopefully, we can hold your attention throughout this webinar by providing an early indication that these strategies can work. As you can see, we have been successful at recruiting and retaining a more visually diverse staff over the past 15 years. The highest amount of visual diversity amongst our residential life professional staff was 1 year ago. During the fall of 2009, 34.5% of our Eastern Illinois University's residential life professional staff were people of color. Today, we have the highest amount for our student staff at 28.3%. Recruiting and retaining people of color is not just a residential life issue, but also a corporate one. The push first started in the late 1980s when the Workforce 2000 report came out stating that a majority of candidates beginning in the 2000s would be women and minorities. Therefore, millions of dollars, hours, and human resources were spent, and all are still currently being spent on recruiting and retaining people of color to work for companies and institutions. Recruiting is one thing, retention is another. Retention starts the recruitment. How do you encourage people of color to consider the field of student affairs? How do you promote opportunities for current people of color on your staff, and how do you grow your own? Kathy Humphrey, who is a current Vice Provost and Dean of Students at the University of Pittsburgh and a past consultant in residence at the COCUO 2004 conference, has served as a motivational speaker and consultant over several years. One question she asked us was, how do you grow your own? What are you doing to help your people of color, in particular your undergraduate students, on your college campuses to consider a career in residential life or student affairs? At Eastern Illinois University, we understood the importance of what Kathy was asking, and we set out to grow our own. We reached out to our students of color and created what we called the SAP program, or Student Affairs Preparatory Program. We also began working with the Office of Civil Rights to begin tracking ethnicity in our student staff hiring processes, even though we were not required to do so. We established meetings with our Black Student Union in our campus, or Black Student Union on our campus, and gained their perceptions of our department and the employment opportunities we had to offer. We learned that we did not have to change much, but we did need to show that we valued our students of color, that we needed to maintain direct lines of communication to market those opportunities available, and that we had the ability to support people of color after he or she were hired. At the beginning of August training and during the month of September of every school year, we recruit students to participate in our SAP program. This program introduces students to the field of residential life and student affairs through programs and mentoring offered by current graduate students and professional staff within student affairs on Eastern Illinois University's campus. Currently this year, for example, we have 17 students in the SAP program. We connect them to our current graduate students in our CSA department. We encourage their participation in conferences, and we provide a $1,500 scholarship at the end of every year that goes to the most outstanding student who is pursuing a career in student affairs. We value encouraging students to become professionals in our field and our professional staff. Our professional staff enjoys working at EIU because of the fulfillment they receive by mentoring a student into the field. Establishing a preparatory program is a proven method to increase the retention and recruitment of staff of color. Now let's talk about some common mistakes. Kathy shared with us that something that still resonates with me today. She said, you don't do any favors by hiring someone just to meet a need unless they are the best candidate for the job. If you hire someone that is not best for the job and they happen to be a person of color and they do not succeed, then you might be perpetuating stereotypes and creating situations that are worse for not only the employee but also for the department. Some people talk about token hiring, and Kathy was simply saying this does nothing for anyone. In fact, it makes things worse.
Second common mistake is that you do not have to have people of color bear the cross at every committee or initiative that promotes diversity. We cannot do it alone. It's critically important to remember that we all have multiple identities which influence our skill sets. It's important that not only have a person of color bear the cross at every committee, initiative, or search committee in an effort to promote more visual diversity. It's demeaning, it suggests narrow-mindedness on behalf of the manager or the supervisor, and it suggests that a staff person in question might have been hired as that token Jody mentioned, not because we were assumed to be an asset with res life skills. Everyone was joining in order to make progress in this area, and that's something to just really reemphasize that we can't do it alone.
And the third common mistake is understanding the power of word-of-mouth marketing. For example, if you hire a staff member of color who is not right for the position and they leave with a bad taste in his or her mouth, it can be a problem. This employee can do more harm to your recruitment process because of their bad experiences and the fact that they're going to go out and talk to their colleagues and friends. The same can be true in a positive way. If you do the process correctly and land a great staff member, provide them with what they need and provide them the important resources that require them to be successful, then they will talk up your institution, they will share that with their colleagues, and you will improve your retention and recruitment.
At times, the discontentment of people of color while in the job is often misguided by supervisors due to their own experiences. It is not that they do not want to see the full view, just that they're unable to. Usually these supervisors are typically convinced that they cannot recruit or retain people of color due to the organizational culture, but that this is simply not true at all. Big-name schools are able to get applicants from everywhere under the sun because they have that reputation out there. And no matter how good or bad the experience, as long as they do their job well, they're able to then put on their resume and it be a gold star. For smaller schools with less national recognition, the recruitment efforts have to be a lot more personal. Sometimes that's the defining factor for your institution, how you make people feel. As in most situations involving the understanding and appreciation of differences, one must know and understand their own biases and consider learning more about white privilege. At times, the discontentment of people of color while on a job is often misguided by supervisors due to their own experiences. And that's something that we really need to focus on and kind of keep in mind in the forefront.
Okay, I think we're at a good point to see if there's any questions or thoughts at this point. So let's see what we have.
At this point in the presentation, no questions have been asked. Just as a reminder to everybody, if you would like to ask a question, you can type it in the question box, and I will field it for you with our presenters today. So we'll pause for just another moment and allow any time for questions. Nothing so far. If you guys want to continue presenting, I'll let you know if anything comes in.
Great, thanks, Eric. Okay, let's move on. Items focusing on retaining staff of color. According to the book, Do You See What I See by Janice Finn and Chandra Irwin, there are 6 factors that some companies and institutions overlook. If you value retaining people of color within your staff, you must learn their values and passions and provide those experiences to them. Number 2, you must create an environment that values all employees without regard to differences. And number 3, professional development opportunities must be provided. Number 4, encourage new opportunities, establish professional development plans for people of color. 5, demonstrate respect and esteem for people of color. And 6, be aware of limitations within your campus or community. Do not disguise limitations and be upfront with where people can go for the services they need.
I think the
Jody,
big
we've
part
had a question come in. Sorry to interrupt. We did have a question come in, if it's okay. The question is, how has the management team at Eastern addressed discontentment with their staff of color?
Well, you know, through direct communication with those individuals, an understanding of where they are at. We do professional development plans. We refer back to those during our one-on-ones. We do evaluations. We do work groups. And we also, mid-semester, do a kind of a departmental assessment that our professional staff are involved in to see, well, to measure their job satisfaction.
I think the other thing, too, is that with the developments, we have a number of different committees, and one of those committees focuses on social justice and diversity issues and efforts, and we ask for their feedback, especially in training, or things that we can continually do better, you know, because we don't have all the answers. We're always looking to change and adapt because our students are changing and the needs of our professionals.
Another question, what can schools that are in more rural areas do to recruit people of color?
Well, there's not many schools that are more rural than us. So I would first say, you know, begin using some of the strategies and tips here. Something that we're going to talk about a little later, something that we've learned from previous staff of color that have worked here is one selling point we have here at Eastern is, you know, there's less distractions, especially our students of color who are in the undergraduate or graduate programs. There's less distractions here, so you can focus a little bit more on academics. And, you know, that might sound a little odd to market positions that way, but it's the truth. And, you know, some people enjoy the slower lifestyle of the rural area once they've lived in an urban area. And that's not something that you really know until you do so.
Okay, another question. Will you be speaking more about your Student Affairs Prep program? Can you tell us what it entails? Is it degree granting or a programming series?
Yeah, we actually made a transition this year where our staff program we did entirely on our own. And this past summer, I went to our COSPA group, which is our College Student Affairs Student Personnel Association, and all of the graduates in our College Student Affairs Department are sharing this responsibility of providing the STAP program to our undergraduate students. In fact, they're really taking the lead. We wanted to expand the program a little bit more outside of residential life. We wanted it to be a little bit more student affairs. And the other thing that we were noticing, too, is that, you know, our previous STAP program, the participants could be mentored with our Vice President of Student Affairs, with myself, with Mark Hudson, those types of people. And what we were beginning to learn is that, you know, I'm going to rip on myself for a minute, I guess, but the undergraduate students in the STAP program really enjoyed the mentoring they were getting from the current graduate students in the College Student Affairs program. And, you know, they could speak more to the stresses of going through a College Student Affairs program, earning a master's degree. Here's thesis required. They want to learn more about the thesis. And our graduate students learn a lot about mentoring in that process as well. As I said, we began marketing this STAP program during our RA training in August, and then we push it in September to all of our hall councils and our RHA and NRHH. And October is National Student Affairs Month, so we kind of kick things off there. They meet periodically about every other week on Sunday nights. One of our grads, Justin Hsu, meets with them along with one of our complex directors, Jacob Knight, and they work together on meeting the needs of our students. So we provide programs, we provide opportunities for them to grow and develop. We educate them on things that they need to do to prepare for a career in student affairs. We're obviously going to put them through some mock interviews. We're going to help them, you know, critique their resumes as they prepare for OPE and that sort of thing.
I think the other piece of that, too, is that for those who aren't searching this year, we bring a small group as part of our recruitment team when we go to OPE. So we're able to then also have that intentional conversation. They're able to see the experience and have that the idea of, okay, this is what I'm going to go through within the next year, within the next 2 years, when I'm ready to make that transition into graduate school.
Do you have time for one more question for now?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. What critical elements would you consider necessary in recruiting to your institution?
Well, as we were just saying, word-of-mouth marketing can go a long way. And if you can't keep the staff that you have currently satisfied, if they don't truly believe that you're walking the talk, for example, people can talk about recruiting people of color. But I also think it speaks volumes to the department and to other individuals about, have you ever given promotional opportunities to people of color? Are you really walking the talk? You got to show the value. You got to be reaching out to your undergraduate students. And, with the SAP program, we just found it to be crucial that, all of us need to invest in our undergraduate students. All of us need to market our profession. And by doing so, it puts more qualified, diverse applicants out into our candidate pools, and we just can't rely on a couple of schools to provide us the people that we're going to hire down the road. So, if you're at a large institution, you might be able to put, 20 students into the field. You might be able to put 15 graduate students into the field. If you're at a smaller institution, you might want to make it a goal to find one each semester. You got to do what works best for you, your department, and your institution. But as long as all of us show that we love our jobs and we focus on our employees and their job satisfaction, that word-of-mouth marketing is going to be strong, and it's going to appeal especially to people of color.
Okay, that's all the questions we've had for now. We will have an opportunity to ask questions later in the presentation, so if you do have them, please feel free to submit them, and we will save them until the presenters are ready.
And a lot of those answers for those questions, because those were really great, we're going to reemphasize those as we continue the presentation, so people will get more in-depth answers to that. So hopefully that'll be helpful. Okay, so 4, 5, and 6 have been up there for a few minutes. So obviously you've had some time to kind of think about that and let that sink in. One thing that I think that is a big part of this is being in touch with your staff. It's a mutual relationship between the staff member and the employer. As a supervisor, you should be able to know when somebody is getting burned out. Staff of color aren't always open when it comes to personal issues or things that are affecting their ability to enjoy being part of your staff for fear of being stereotyped. Adjustment can be made, but it's also sometimes difficult, especially for staff of color. So try to assist in that process. Help them with finding barbershops or hair salons. As a joke, I know that's important for me. For those who know me personally, I'm all about hair and makeup, so that's very important. Give a rundown of what people want to do or what people around their same age group. We're all coming in and have those personal experiences and those things that make us real well-rounded. And find out what's out there that's fun to do in the city, because we live, eat, sleep, breathe our jobs. And so being able to know what those outlets are on the weekends when we're not on call, where we're not engaging with staff, is beneficial. Don't just tell them about the Black or the Hispanic events, because we are wanting to branch out and know all of the different things that that community can offer. Also allow them opportunities to mentor and advise students whom they feel some kind of instantaneous connection with, whether it's within the scope of their job or outside of it. Retention is all about those opportunities you're being provided professionally. It's not just about how much salary you're being offered, although money and benefits are nice. Sometimes there's staff, and this is staff all across the board. We get caught up in titles or dollar signs, not recognizing that being given that extra project or assignment is a sign of trust, and that you can be relied on, and that you are a valued member. Employers usually don't give significant projects or responsibilities to those who they don't value or who they don't want to retain.
Okay, previously we mentioned that we would get back to obtaining more diverse pools, and that's where we're going to move on to now. Obviously, the first step for all of us is to consider how we promote people of color into our field, but once that is done, we can focus on the following 6 items. 1, establish flexible job requirements. Do not make them so specific that only a limited amount of individuals are qualified for the job. For example, master's preferred as opposed to master's required might be one way to open up your pools and to get a more visually diverse pool. Number 2, network and work your contacts. Obviously, talking to alumni, colleagues, and friends about openings is going to help get the word out. Number 3, be intentional and target diverse groups and organizations such as HBCUs, NPHC programs, Black Student Unions, NAACP, LASSO, and other critical student associations. Number 4, encourage current people of color or alums to provide names and contact information of outstanding people of color who are currently searching. 5, be sure to keep your current staff satisfied and challenged. And 6, focus once again on professional development. Professional development opportunities are one of the key factors to landing entry-level professionals.
Search committees need diversity. For instance, it's definitely noticeable and it makes a difference when a search committee can have a diverse representation, especially if candidates are curious if, 1, will they be the only person of color, staff member of color, within that staff or within the department, or 2, are they really as diverse as they say? It makes a strong impact on a candidate's decision whether to choose your institution over another. Keep in mind that you must be intentional in this area, as it takes much more than providing us with a host who is also a staff member of color, or throwing some random student on the committee.
Okay, other tips to improve recruitment and retention. 1, understanding your role in creating environments that value all employees without regard to differences. If you cannot keep your employees happy, as we were talking about earlier when we were responding to some of the questions, if you can't keep them happy regardless of their ethnicity, the word-of-mouth marketing will obviously deter anyone from considering work at your institution. Students will receive better learning experiences from your staff if your staff shows passion and love for what they do. Some say take care of your students first, but some might also say taking care of your employees first will keep both groups highly satisfied. Number 2, understand how others perceive you in this role. Are you role modeling proper behaviors? Do you walk the talk so that your actions are not just words? And then do you show value and importance of providing a visually diverse staff for your students? And number 3, do you demonstrate value to people of color and provide the tools necessary to ensure success?
Some other things that you can do within this area is, in regards to releasing your job announcements, making sure that those are shaped to attract a diverse pool. Highlight and publicize diversity growth in your department, campus, or diversity initiatives that you're working on. One colleague who is a person of color shared with me that one thing that would make her want to endure cultural hardships in the community would be knowing that I'm on a campus that is serious about their diversity initiative, because then they are helping change and shape the culture and that environment and leaving that stamp so that there can be a foundation and a legacy for those students, because it's all about creating those global citizens.
Okay, point number 4, provide a student affairs welcoming committee to people of color when they arrive to your campus. 5, consider student staff work groups for people of color who serve as RAs. And 6, provide promotional opportunities for people of color.
Here at EIU, our Office of Minority Affairs hosts 2 welcome receptions. One is more of an informal for faculty and staff. This is, for us, we're right in that transition of just finishing up our pro-staff training and our student staff training. So it's right before we really hit the ground and running. It's on a Saturday afternoon. It's hosted at a faculty member's house, and that's an opportunity for new staff. I know when I first got here, I was able to meet new staff that were within my department that were staff of color or allies, as well as partners or colleagues, potential colleagues that I would make those future partnerships from across campus. The second reception that they do is the week during that first week of classes, and it's called the Minority and Student Staff Reception. And so that's an opportunity for faculty and staff to engage with students of color, find out what the registered student organizations are for our campus and those work groups, and an opportunity to meet. So then that way it's a twofold. You're meeting the students that are out in your community, and there's an opportunity for them to see who you are and to find out where they can connect. At a previous institution, we had a staff of color committee, which was an opportunity for RAs, grads, and full-time staff to connect across the department, to listen and provide that support and mentorship, and that was very beneficial because that was a very large department on a very large campus. So as far as some questions to ponder, what barriers exist at your own institution that adversely affects the recruitment and retention of people of color? One thing that is key is the fit for the candidate and the institution, which is actually an institutional concern, not just a departmental concern. I had a colleague say to me, he was an African-American male, that he can remember sitting in an interview with the dean of students for a private institution in Pennsylvania, and he was told, we have no multicultural groups on our campus, and that's not something that we really even desire to get into. So he had asked her, how would a young African-American male fare on her campus? And she responded, well, if you are a professional, you'll be fine. Bad fit for him, but she was honest, and that was something that he appreciated. It's important to remember that your department's goals and values must connect with the institution, and make sure that that's not a barrier, that you're selling or offering something different than the voice that represents your institution. So if you fall into that area, that may be an example as you try to think or hash out what those barriers are. Another question to ponder, what are strategies that you are aware of that encourages the recruitment and retention of people of color? In my preparation for this webinar, I found that several colleagues in my network felt this. Recruitment efforts should mirror retention efforts. Technically, they feel that they are one and the same on many levels, and that people of color network is very small. If someone has had a bad experience, and I know this is something that we mentioned before earlier in our presentation, if they've had a bad experience somewhere, they're going to let people know. However, at the same time, if they've had a positive one, they'll recruit for you, and you'll have the ability to retain them longer and they will then attribute to your success of your staff team. Thus, two goals are being achieved at the same time. Another question we have is, what are those strategies that you've used that we have failed to mention? And I would pose those as far as questions at the end, and those things that you would like to share with those that are here with us. So we're going to move into our final time as far as our transition to how we came about this presentation, and we have some resources to share.
Here are the two resources that we would strongly encourage you guys to look into. The first resource is the book called Do You See What I See by Janice Finn and Chandra Irwin, like I talked about earlier. These authors offer a diversity tale for retaining people of color. It is an excellent short read that we would highly recommend if you have not already read it. The second book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, is another excellent read. This book covers many social issues, but Chapter 7 focuses on employment issues, white privilege, and talks about how many individuals are in favor of affirmative action, except for when it comes to their own job. Okay, so that kind of ends our presentation at this point. Before we go into questions, just know that the bottom line is focusing on the importance of encouraging students of color to enter our field. No matter where your institution is located, urban, rural, small, large, public, or private, we must all combine forces to focus on this effort. If we can all develop programs on our campus, the stronger our chances of recruiting and retaining people of color into our field will happen. Okay, so what kind of questions do we have out there?
Okay, we have a question. Earlier you mentioned being flexible in job requirements and make it master's preferred. As we've moved towards being more of a master's required profession, isn't this regressive or counter the trend in our profession? Plus, wouldn't a glaring issue be that we're treating candidates differently based on degrees in order to diversify our staff?
And that's possible. My experience has been that we're not moving more towards required. And maybe it's because, I don't know who all's out there, but, I've been in this field for a little over 15 years, and what I've seen over the years is that I see a lot more bachelor's required, master's preferred, where when I was a younger professional, I saw more master's required. So maybe it's different perceptions. I don't know, but I know that at Eastern, especially working with our civil rights department, especially with our full-time jobs, the important thing that they have recommended to us is, why would you limit yourself candidates? And the more, the more vague or the looser the restrictions, the more that your search committee can have several options, and you might find an option out there that meets the needs that you're looking for. I think it's important for every search committee to first sit down before they even review the first candidate and talk about what makes a successful area director. What kind of complex director are we looking for? If we're going to hire a resident director in this process, what are the qualities we want? And put those down. And, you might find someone that has a bachelor's degree and is in the middle of working on a graduate degree, or maybe they're not and are interested to do so in the future, that really meets the needs that you're really looking for. So, I guess what I would say is just don't limit yourself at the beginning. You always have ways to screen people out in the process, but in the beginning, let that funnel be big.
Another question. As some of the tips that were being given earlier, are some of those tips encouraging us to single out people of color?
I don't know. Could they elaborate more on that?
Sure. I'll ask the individual to elaborate further. Another question came in. With the question being answered, does that devalue the master's degree? If we're saying that both people can do the job, are we devaluing the master's education that our profession gets?
Yeah, one could argue that point, and I'm not saying that everyone should go out and do that. What I'm just saying is that with our strategy here at Eastern, in the beginning, I'd rather have a pool of 50 people than 20. Because like I said, when you're looking for a specific need and requirement from a candidate, you might find that within the 50. You may not find that within the 20. Here at Eastern, we say master's preferred, and quite honestly, there's never been a time that we haven't hired anyone that didn't have a master's. But in the beginning, things change, and things could certainly change down the road, especially with the budget situations that a lot of us are dealing with. You might be able to save some money hiring someone who's got a bachelor's and not a master's. So, it's really dependent upon the climate of your institution and what your priorities are.
I think the other thing, too, is that looking at the master's degree, that a lot of institutions will preference master's in college student affairs or in some type of whatever student affairs program, or the option of master's required students or related field. And that also can assist in diversifying that pool, that you may have someone with a lot of student affairs experience, but they chose to get their master's degree in another area that is very comparable to meeting the needs of your department's initiatives and programs and meeting the needs of your students. And that could also be that defining factor if you're not at a point to change that master's requirement, maybe just looking at expanding the concentration of the type of candidates and the master's degrees that they have. We have, for example, some of our graduate students, a majority of them, of course, are going through our college student affairs program, but we've had ed administration graduate students and MBA students that have a wide array of skill sets that have been not only beneficial to the department, but beneficial to our students, and that has shown an example of, well, I want to continue in the field, but I want to have a broad-based master's degree. How can I do that and still have this experience of working on a college campus?
Okay, I have some clarification from the earlier question. If you can go back to the couple of slides where you gave tips about welcoming people of color that were hired, the question was about those. Does that single out those individuals? And if so, is that a bad thing?
Okay, which slide was it again, Eric?
I think it was the one the next one.
I think it was a couple back. It was the tips for hiring, or I'm sorry, tips for welcoming people of color. One of them was creating a committee. Yeah, that one.
So the question is, are we singling out a particular individual of color?
Yes.
We've not had that experience here. You know, it's usually a group process where, you know, for example, you know, our student affairs preparatory program, there's diversity there, and it goes back to meeting the needs of the individual, finding out what those needs are, and helping that individual with those needs, regardless of ethnicity. As I've said, we targeted working with certain student organizations and groups on our campus. We set up a meeting with the Black Student Union president, and we talked about what are some perceptions of our department. We did the same thing with our Pride organization on campus. We did the same thing with LASSO. And you know, they just gave us some honest feedback. And you know, sometimes you think you're doing an excellent job in promoting social justice, but someone else from another perspective gives you a tip or suggestion that you hadn't thought of before. And just going out and asking those questions has really built a stronger relationship because it was genuine. And you know, there was honest feedback, and we were receptive to that constructive criticism. You know, for example, what really stands out to me is you know, when we met with the Black Student Union, they looked at the resident assistant position and said, you know, that doesn't really appeal to us. And you know, we asked why, and you know, they're like, it's you know, there's this stereotypical you know, authoritative position, and so we just went in and said, okay, here's the position, and it's a resident assistant. You're there to help people, and you know, writing people up and filling out incident reports is something that you do as part of the job, but it's not the #1 priority. So we were intentional in how we marketed the RA position across the entire campus to make sure that people understood that we're looking for people who are going to help our students and provide resources and direct them to the right places, and that, you know, our 5th priority out of all the job responsibilities an RA has is to enforce policy, and that helped us a lot.
Okay, another question. Can you tell us about how you employ different departments at the university to recruit qualified candidates of color?
Want to take that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we work closely with the Office of Minority Affairs. There's been times that we have traveled together to the Southern Placement Exchange because they have graduate assistants in their program as well. Mona Davenport is our director there, and I will meet with her individually from time to time, and we'll talk about some of the needs and some of the wants. And she has former housing experience, so she is really helpful to us because she has some housing contacts out there that she can say, hey, you know what, we're looking for a new complex director, and Jody, I think this person is someone that should apply for the position. Our Office of Civil Rights, Cynthia Nichols is our director. She's been a strong supporter for us. She gets word out as well. She holds us accountable. And you know, those are the first two that really jump out at me, and they're the ones that we collaborate with on a weekly basis when we're in recruitment season.
Okay, another question. Can you share specific ideas for promotional opportunities for people of color?
Specific ideas for promotional opportunities for people of color?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think it's important to have a structure where you offer promotional opportunities to anyone. And as I was saying earlier, it speaks volumes to people. Let's say you bring in a resident director that happens to be an individual of color. You make sure that you sit down with them, that you understand what their values are, where they want to go, what they're passionate. Maybe their passion is student leadership, and how do you work them into helping advise RHA, and making sure that they grow, that they bloom where they're planted as a resident director. And once they've done that, do you have a complex director or an area director or an assistant director position? Because quite honestly, one belief I have is that if you excel at your training and development, and if you have a strong supervisory staff, some of the best candidates that you have in a pool should be your own, if you're doing things right. And so, of course, you got to be careful about not hiring too many internal candidates. You want a nice mixture. You want a diversity of thought on your management teams and that sort of thing. But there's nothing wrong with hiring internally, especially if you can give a promotional opportunity that speaks to the values that you have. And all of us in residential life have a value of having a visually diverse staff. And think back to the past 5 or 10 years, and has your department been in a position where you've been able to do that? And if you have, then that word-of-mouth marketing can really help. And sometimes you just don't have that opportunity. I understand that too. But how do you set yourself up to be able to create that opportunity? It's something that I think is important for departments to sit down and discuss, because once an individual, regardless of their ethnicity, likes a job and gets acclimated to the community and to the campus, they might want to stick around. And if you're exceptional at providing them great training and development, they're going to be one of the best candidates for the next job.
I definitely agree. Being a person that this is my second position at Eastern, and also looking at the staff that we've had come in and out, along with schools similar to us that have those opportunities, and the people that I look to in the field in terms of mentorship and support, they've been in similar structures. And it all boils down to starting with that first year of them being part of your team and really shaping and mentoring them and supporting them in terms of what their professional development plan is. Where do you see yourself after 3 years? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? What are going to be those opportunities or things that you should take advantage of when that time comes, and shaping that so that they're being provided with those opportunities, whether it's webinars like this one or attending LaCuho in the annual conference, getting that strength to do the research because you're providing these tools, and they're great in terms of the training and development you're providing to your staff and your student staff, but sharing those resources with other colleagues and then going out and then absorbing those tools and bring them back so that you can have a dynamic department and a dynamic team, because that will help them in their growth as they prepare to make that transition. And as those opportunities become available, they will be more apt to do the next level. Did I think 3 years ago that I would be here as a complex director? No, not really. And initially, that is far from your mind as you're coming in as a first-year resident director, and it's been going into my 6th year here now. And so thinking about that, it was all of those right pieces set in place. That okay, I am making a difference. I have a voice at the table, and I'm being provided that so that, okay, I want to continue and see and go to the next level because those options are available within our structure.
Something else I just remembered that I wanted to share, someone earlier asked about, how can you help encourage people of color to consider rural areas? And one other strategy that we changed here was, previously we used to only market the Charleston community. But then we expanded that to the Charleston-Mattoon area. Mattoon's a sister city just 7 miles to the west of us. We're connected by Route 16. And we noticed that a lot of our staff will go over to Mattoon or to shop or to dine or whatever, as well as Charleston. And, we're in a much more global society, and people commute a lot more than they used to. And, we also market the fact that, yeah, when you look at a map and you see Charleston, Illinois, it may not look like there's a lot of metropolitan urban areas around us, but it's 2 hours to Indianapolis, and it's 2.5 to St. Louis, and it's 3.5 to Chicago. And a lot of our staff will, go to those urban areas for a weekend and get some of the things that they're looking for. We also market Champaign-Urbana to our north, Effingham to our south, Terre Haute to the east. So, I would encourage people that feel like they're in remote areas to look around them and to maybe expand their marketing message.
Okay, we have another question. What type of feedback did you receive from students of color who were hesitant to become student staff leaders?
I think the same that you get from all students or student staff, students don't initially come to college thinking, I'm going to be an RA. Maybe a little bit more now because social media has impacted that. You see a lot more television shows that feature students in college and having the titles of resident assistants and things like that. So their seed is initially there, and then they get here. That really does exist? Oh, okay. And once they get in that position, something that has helped is, first off the bat, we have marketed that staff program. And then also it's those intentional conversations and those one-on-ones. Talking with the RA at the beginning of the year of not only what kind of community that you want to build, what type of RA do you want to be? And looking at the skill sets, because we always market the skill sets you get as a resident assistant, but how that's going to help you later on down the line. And then they spark and ask the question sometimes, well, how did you get your job? And being able to share that story, I think has been great. I know something with my staff. I have a staff of 17 lovely RAs, depending on the day of the week. But talking to them about this doesn't have to be the rest of your life, but do you have plans to go to graduate school? How are you paying for that? Looking at that you're going to be in this position 1, maybe 2 years, 3 years, allowing that to go the distance. And even if it's not a career, let that be your in the meantime career as you're getting that master's degree. And then they have that aha moment as they're enjoying that experience. And just showing those examples and giving them those, because the proof is in the pudding, if you will, giving them those connections so that they can see that, making those connections that, okay, with our building, for example, there's 17 RAs. I have 3 graduate assistants right now. But introducing them to the graduate assistant in the complex across the way who's an MBA student, because I know that some of them want to go to law school or they want to get an MBA, and making that connection so they can shadow them to know that this experience can really take me and go the distance. I think that that's something that we forget about versus just saying, yes, you want this as a career, but there's different levels to what career means for undergraduate students, because once they've captured that idea and then we fast forward, it's their senior year, I'm really now passionate not only about the graduate position, but I may consider spending a few years or several years as a resident director, because I've gained all these skill sets and I've enjoyed seeing the change in the students' lives that I've impacted.
I would add that, we're talking earlier about evaluation tools, and I would encourage everyone to consider, and probably most people are doing this already, but using exit interviews. We do exit interviews whenever a staff member leaves, and especially with our undergraduate staff and our resident assistants. We want to know what they liked most about their job. We want to know what they liked least about their job, and what are some resources that they need to do a better job. And whether a staff member leaves for some reason in October or whether everyone's leaving at the end of May, it's important to take that information and see what stands out. We've changed a lot of the things that we do. We've changed our programming model based on what our RAs were telling us. And in particular, you can look at the RAs that were individuals of color and see, is there a different message coming out from this group than the other group? And in the 5 or 6 years that we've done exit interviews, the message has always been the same. It's never been different based on ethnicity. Those exit interviews are pretty powerful. And for them to conduct those, it's not a survey you just hand out and do electronically. It's a survey where the direct supervisor sits down with them at their last one-on-one and says, okay, let's reflect upon your experience as a resident assistant. Let's talk about the things that you're proud of, what you're not proud of, those sorts of things. And that information can go a long way.
Has the successful recruitment and retention of staff of color had any effect on your institution's ability to attract and retain a diverse student body?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know if it's chicken and the egg or what, but our minority population has grown a lot in the past 5 years.
About in the last 5 years.
I'm trying to remember the percentage off the top of my head, but I think right now we have just under 4,000 students living in our 12 residence halls and in our Greek court. And if I remember correctly with our demographics, I think around 22%, it's 22 or 24 percent are people of color that live on our campus residentially. And that's actually higher than our entire undergraduate population, which is more around 16 or 18% right now. So, we take that as feeling like we're providing an environment that people of color enjoy living in. And, we want to do everything we can to keep that going.
Something else, too, when Eastern is being marketed, we have our open house days. We have several that happen throughout the year where we have our students giving hall tours in our residence halls, but that morning as students and families together are going to different workshops and sessions that happen, we have our housing and dining table to answer questions. All our full-time staff is present, so we get a lot of questions, and they're able to see the different hall directors out in the different buildings. And they'll ask us different questions and the different programs and opportunities that are out there for their students. I know also this summer, I had the opportunity to work with our Office of Admissions here, and they do, this summer and last summer, they go out and do review weekends where our incoming freshmen or potential or prospective students come out and they do picnics in different areas. Like they go to our East St. Louis area. They also go up to Chicagoland in the suburbs and work with the alumni and making that connection with the alumni. And then we're also there and present. So we're answering questions, and they're seeing our faces in that connection. And that has also made a big difference because then opening weekend comes, and I remember you, and I met you. You came to my hometown, and those different things. And that's also helped, I think, a lot in terms of the recruitment strategies as an institution, because our department is making that partnership with our Office of Admissions as well. And that's offered to, has been able to be offered to all of our staff. And then they also do these particular reach-out sessions targeting our minority populations within these communities. So the marketing Eastern. And I think that that's also made a difference because those families have been able to make a connection and know that, okay, my child will see someone that they can identify with going to a new environment, and particularly those concerns of I'm sending my child to a predominantly white institution, and what are going to be those tools and resources and support systems in place for my child as they're maturing into adulthood and starting their college career.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation today. I do have one comment that one of our audience members asked to share. This is from Bob Brophy at University Center. He just had a comment for helping retain staff of color as well. He suggests to encourage and promote professional development through conference opportunities, and also let them pursue areas of interest such as business management, social justice, conduct, facilities, and areas not just the status quo that exists in residence life, and to support them in diversifying experiences in their resumes as well. So we've had a lot of great information today. I want to thank everybody for attending. If you do have additional questions that we weren't able to answer, we would encourage you to email our presenters. Presenters, would you like to share your email addresses one last time?
Yes. This is mine, Quiana Stone. It's QM Stone at eiu.edu. Again, Q, M as in Michelle, Stone at eiu.edu.
And mine is jestone at eiu.edu.
No relation. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much again for your time today. Just a quick announcement for everyone. This webinar archive video will be available on the website early next week. It'll be posted at glucuho.org under the resources heading. There's a category called Webinar Archives. So you're welcome to review this and forward it on to anybody else that wasn't able to attend today. Thanks again for attending, and we look forward to serving the membership of Glucuho through future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.